Hi guys, and welcome back to another Division 2 video. In today's video I took to Reddit to ask fellow redditors their opinions on Division 2. I posed them with two questions, asking them if they could change one thing with the Division and the Dark Zone, what would it be? And as you can imagine, the redditors brought some great friendly debate to the table for us to discuss. And personally, I think if some of these ideas that you've come up with were implemented into the game, it'd see a vast improvement in our Dark Zone experience. So with that being said, let's jump into today's Division 2 video. So first up is Dr. Sheets, and he says, I'd bring survival over and stop playing everything else. Now for me, I wasn't a massive fan of survival, but I do understand it's got a massive cult following as well. So bringing it back wouldn't cause any harm to the community, and it would bring pleasure to many. So for me, bring it back. Let's move on. Next, a user called Kegstand said, trim out the stats that don't really seem to have any place in the game. Now, I'm not too sure if trimming down the stats is the way to go, but I do understand from his point of view maybe what he's trying to get across is there are too many attributes and roles to take into consideration for gears. There wasn't that many on Division 1, and I suppose it's a case of trying to find the perfect role and the perfect gear or weapon is a lot harder than it was on the Division 1. And with the Division 1 you were able to roll 2 attributes. Although that was on the green gears, still the gold gears didn't have that many things that you could obviously roll, so it does make it a lot harder to perfect the build. So from that point of view, I do agree. Allsarge2401 said he'd like an app where we could sit at work and play with the builds. So for me, this sounds like an intriguing topic that I suppose we could really go into depth with about what the app would consist of, but the thought of sitting on the couch, or as he says, sitting at work with an app and being able to look at gears and maybe not craft, but maybe just look through builds and sort builds out for when you eventually do get on the game, I think would be a great addition. Because at the moment a lot of people don't get to play for hours upon end every single day. You know, people have got social lives, people have got work commitments, families, and I suppose if you were just sitting at home on the couch before you actually got an Xbox or just chilling out after tea, saving some time by going on the app and just configuring a build or taking a look at what you got from the Dark Zone for instance would save a bit of time when you do eventually jump on the game. So yeah, great idea. Not sure how much it'd cost or if the devs would see any benefit from it, but the community definitely would, so maybe worth them looking into it. Next up, Super Samba 94 says he misses his sticky bombs. Mars Bar says he misses his flash mod. And Il Nino says, skills, I love them in Division 1. Now I only use the revive, hive and the healing mines. Mr. Rudd adds, I would add a very small amount of scaling to skill power in order to mitigate the fact that discrete jumps in skill power means that you have to have excess SP not used. Nothing too severe like scaling, skill mods should still dictate how much you invest in skills, just a smart refund. So we'll tackle it from the top to the bottom. Yeah, I agree the skills in this game aren't that great, but I think they could be better if they were just implemented better in the way you use them and how smooth they are to use. For instance, there was a few other posts regarding the chem launcher healer which people were saying should go back to just having to tap LB, and I totally agree. And I think the same with the likes of the Seekers for instance, so if the skills weren't based on you pressing RB or LB to activate, or the chem launcher was just a case of tapping a button, so we just went back to basics and the transition of it happening was a lot smoother, I think the community would be happier as a whole. But as for the variety, there are quite a few I suppose, but yeah, definitely a priority. And I think that would solve the case of the first 3 people, to be honest, if he had skills that were actually easier to use. But the point that Mr. Rudd brings up is a really strong and valid point. There is no point of you having any skill power whatsoever unless you meet the minimum requirements of, say, like a purple mod. I know you can get lower scale mods, but by the time you get to endgame, purple and gold are the ones that you're obviously going for. So if you don't meet the threshold at all for any of the skill mods, the skill power you do have is just an absolute waste. So maybe making the things like the chem launcher healer scale to the little tiny bit of skill power that you do have would be a great addition. So at the moment skill power is a bit of a useless stat, but we do know that they are bringing out battery orcs to go on your skill mods, which will give you a boost in skills. So I suppose it's a case of waiting to see how they're implemented and see if they do improve people who aren't heavily stacking into skill power for instance. And the last suggestion before we move on to the Dark Zone section is an absolute pet hate of mine. I mean, I don't know if I'm on my own here, but I really detest this one, and I'm glad that Santo Valentino brought it up. So he said, clinging to walls when I roll the opposite way. I'm trying to adjust to the game's cover to cover style, but when a grenade comes at you, dodging is iffy. I can't tell you how much I echo Santo's post here. Like, it's the most ridiculous thing in the game, especially considering they're making it into more of a cover to cover based shooter, which is obviously what the game is intended to be. So for instance, on a controller, if I'm in cover and I double press A 180 degrees away, so literally directly away from the cover to get away from a grenade for instance, and let go of A, the agent will literally just suck himself onto the nearest cover, or if there's no cover near him, 9 times out of 10 he'll literally just go back to where he came from. Now for me, once you double press A out of cover, you're trying to get away from something, aren't you? So if you're double pressing A, it should put you automatically out of cover no matter how close you are to any other cover. And if you want to double tap A to go into another cover, you should just double tap it and keep your finger on A to go into the new cover that you direct into. So yeah, I cannot echo his statements anymore. Get it sorted, massive. So next up is all the suggestions that the community on Reddit came up with for the Dark Zone. There are some absolute belter ideas in here, and I think we might change PvP if any of these were implemented, but there are a few that I just want to squash before we get into the main bunch, maybe 2 or 3, and that's just some of the people have suggested, which just isn't going to happen. So first one is Omnu 5 Thought said, not being spawn killed when you enter. Now straight away, I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. It's part of the game. They brought the turrets in to help people get out of checkpoints in the normalised zones. In the occupied zones where it isn't, you can simply just go to another checkpoint. There is no reason why you need to stay at the checkpoint once you die, because you'll lose all your loot, so you can still fast travel. There is no point whatsoever of changing this. And for instance, some people do like to just go into the Dark Zone for PvP action, so what they'll do is they'll just group up outside the checkpoint, fight, and when you die it's close enough for you to get back in the action, or wait your turn. So no, unfortunately mate, it's not going to change, and I don't think it'd be good for the community either. They Call Me Loco says, time to extract. I'm gathering he means reducing the time it takes to extract, because he's tired of being killed right at an extraction, especially when they're just trying to get better gear out for PvP. As you can see from my comment below and Mars Bars, it just simply is a no-go. The fact that he says he's just trying to get gear out for PvE suggests that he's not a PvP player, so he kind of just doesn't understand it. And he's looking at the devs to maybe give him a bit more PvP style based Dark Zone, and it's just not going to happen. One of the main thrills of the Dark Zone is waiting for the extraction to come in. That minute waiting for it to come in, hooking on, waiting another minute, can be absolute torture when you've got a god roll item that you just know is going to improve your build so much, because you just don't know a team is just going to come fly around the corner and try and take you out. So no, it's not going to happen. But as Mars Bars does say there, you can go into the occupied Dark Zone, and there is a perk within the Dark Zone skill tree to reduce the extraction time. And to be honest, it is a great reduction in time as well, because before you know it, your loot's on and it's gone, so there is, I suppose you've got to look at it that way as well. That's exactly what you're asking for, but in the same breath, stop trying to make the game too much of a PvE style game, because at the end of the day, Dark Zone is for PvP. So moving on, all the next posts are actually ones that I agree with, and we'll save the best to last, unfortunately, if you want to hear them all. And some of them are absolutely brilliant. There's some theories in there which I think everyone can get behind, and I think if some of these are implemented within the Dark Zone, I do think the PvP experience will come good. So yeah, let's take a look at them now. So firstly, KVU39564 says, maybe make it feel more like a Warzone. There are times in the light zone when stuff just breaks out between multiple groups of NPCs. I feel like it should happen in the Dark Zone. Not sure how they do it, since there's movement paths going towards activities being close to each other in the light zone that causes this kind of stuff. I just think it'd be cool with PvP, PvE chaos. Now, firstly, one thing I would want to address, it was stated that they are going to try and make all PvE interactions at the landmarks, so that'll hopefully encourage PvP away from them, so there's no conflict between the two. But I must admit, when you are walking through the light zone and you do see all those factions just going at it, it does look like a realistic Warzone, like he puts it, so it is really an intriguing topic I suppose we can discuss down below. And I think my only concern with it is, in the Dark Zone, every group of NPCs seem to have a drone person flying 2 drones, somebody on a remote control car, a grenade launcher, somebody who sets you on fire with a bullet or 2, you know. So if you took the aspect of that, then putting too much of that in one place would kind of be a bit too chaotic. People would be dying too quick. But if you take away all those type of drone and car explosions away from it and just created a straight up gunfight between, like, say, players, rogue agents, and then NPCs of different factions, just like it is in the Light Zone, I think it'd be really cool. So be interested to see what you think about that below. So I know I said I agree with everything going forward, but this one I do agree with and I don't agree with. I agree with aspects of it, so I don't even know how to pronounce your name, I'm sorry, but he or she does say, I've been thinking about this a lot. You know what I'd like? A way to even the playing field and add some ways that us solo players who don't want to grief others can actually grief back rogues. For example, what if you could keep contaminated items in your stash? So if you were in a server where I know I'll get ganked if I try to extract, I can store them and come back to extract them at some other time. Right, so at this point, when I was reading through this message, it was just like, no, don't agree. I didn't agree with anything. I don't think you should be able to stash a contaminated loot. If you want to keep the 5 or 6 items you've got on you, switch your computer off and then come back and extract them another day, that's fine. But to be able to stack them up in your stash, no, that's not going to happen. But then he goes on to say, what if you could put poison or explosives in your contaminated bag? Maybe it takes up 4 inventory slots or something, so you wouldn't be able to do it lightly. But if you could do that, someone who cut your loot off the helicopter, it would trigger a poison explosive that would hurt or kill them. So straight away, this is going to completely divide the community, because no solo player should have any advantage over any other team, regardless if they're in a squad, a duo or a solo. But the fact that he mentions booby trapping gear does intrigue me, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to say implement it like the way he suggests, and I'm not going to say implement it so everybody can do it. The way I maybe think something similar to booby trapping gears could happen is, in the Division 1 we had the Nomad build. So the Nomad was notorious for solo players. They got little tiny buffs if they were solos, and I think they could bring out a gear set to help solo players in the DZ in the sense of survivability, and maybe some extra little perks like not losing so much loot upon death, so the rogues can't see it type of thing, or even concealment on extraction, so it was more like a stealth build. So if you were going to extract your loot, maybe the extraction wouldn't show up on screen until maybe it was about 30 seconds left instead of a minute, or your name didn't pop up anywhere around the extraction area, so they didn't know where you were. Just little things that maybe you could implement that would help solo players without any overpowered talents. That brings me nicely on to the next point made by Stivonix and Werewolf, and they both say that they'd love a Dark Zone that was just for solos. Now I will link to a video that I made before the Division 2 came out regarding solo, duo and squad lobbies. It is worth a listen if you are interested in this, and I do think not only is this a great idea, but it would improve PvP as a whole for the respected solo, duo and squad lobbies. If you think about it, let's just take solos for instance. If you knew you were in a solo Dark Zone with 11 other agents and you see that extraction go up, you know 100% that is just one person on his own, it's not a team, so you're more likely to go and engage in PvP action. Now a lot of people have been hating on the Division 2's PvP, especially the Dark Zone, so for me, bringing in dedicated lobbies is just an absolute winner. I think it's something they've got to implement. I think it'll encourage PvP, and I think people will start loving the Dark Zone again. Now next up is an absolute cracker manhunt theory by Shadowfax28. He says, when you make it to manhunt status, you get contacted by Keener. He thanks you for taking out the second wave agents and has reinforcements coming to get you out. He picks an extraction point that is relatively nearby and gives you an arrival time. You can activate this extraction event using a flare when you arrive at a designated extraction point, and must survive until reinforcements arrive. Once the event begins, a timer starts detailing the chopper's arrival time just like usual. An event area is detailed on the map for the whole server to see, and is much bigger than the normal extraction zone, and you must stay in this area. When the chopper lands, it spawns friendly first wave agents to aid your extraction, because you will probably most likely be outnumbered, and any agent that you kill during this extraction process will have to wait to respawn until you're extracted or you die. And he does say that's just to stop endless waves of agents coming your way. Once the extraction area is clear of agents, you can board the chopper just like you can in survival. Now, I tell you what, that is some theory. I really am impressed by what he's gone off here. And I do agree with him, it could make its own DLC of some sort. Some type of maybe, like, you know, a skirmish conflict mode perhaps. But if we're just going off the fact of what he's talking about being in the dark zone, it just sounds really interesting. So you could literally just make this a real, you know, an in-game timed event for everyone on the server to engage in. So it'd be like structured rogue police in a way, because it'd actually be an event where it'd be worthwhile completing. And I suppose the spoils of getting yourself out in the chopper would have to be, you know, high gears. And I suppose killing the manhunt in the extraction area that he talks about would have to make your spoils worthwhile as well. But I've got to say, I am really impressed with this theory. I don't know how it would be implemented, if it'd be exactly like that. I don't know if it'd be hard to do, but it's definitely worth looking at. I mean, if I was in the dark zone and I seen something like this going off, I would be straight there. Just like when you used to go to the underground contaminated missions in the dark zone to get the really, really rare, you know, the green caches. So if you knew getting off manhunt got you, say for instance, a selection of gear set caches, or taking part in killing the manhunt got you some really good loot, I think it'd be a really interesting concept, and I really do hope the devs do take a look at this in some more detail. So kudos to Shadowfax for bringing that to us today. So I suppose the next two discussions made by Soloratov and Plojo go hand in hand with the manhunt theory, and that is increasing the loot quantity and quality of supply drops, or getting better rewards for killing manhunts. Again, a great shout. I don't think there's much else you can say on that. You should be getting better spoils for those supply drops to make them more, as Solotrov says, a point of conflict, to encourage PvP. And surviving manhunt in this game, because of the time to kill, should be heavily rewarded. So yeah, I totally agree with that. Let's move on. Now next, Arkhound says, I'd like to see them add more building and corridor areas. I feel like it's much crazier and fun to run into other players, and at the moment we have a lot less area to move around in. Now I totally agree with this. I don't think the concepts of the dark zones are great. I think they could have picked a better area of the map. For instance, if you see here, the Federal Triangle area and around the theatre settlement, the actual layout of the roads are similar to the Dark Zone in Division 1, where it's a lot like a grid-like Dark Zone. And I just think the angles that they create down roads, go through buildings, are great. And I must admit, the amount of buildings you can actually run through are very limited compared to Division 1. And there's just near enough, well, the underground system is non-existent, and that was just a big part of being manhunt, running away, going underground, holding them off at the entrance to the underground. You know, I just really detest the actual layout of the dark zones at the moment. Majority of it is just really underwhelming. Now I would like to know down below in the comments what you think personally of the dark zones. Are the dark zones as good as the one in Division 1? I don't even think they're a patch. So Arkhound, I totally agree, and I think that moves me nicely onto the final point, which near enough 20% of the people who commented and interacted with the post. So these were the first few people that actually posted, and that is Lone Sindel, Information, Master Gun 95, Oversocks, I think that's pronounced, Mongoose 1. In one way, shape or form, all agree they should have made a bigger map and just narrowed it down to one big dark zone like it is in Division 1. Now for me, if you take a look at some of the points that we made in this video before this one, people talk about playing as a solo is hard. They talked about it being too small, checkpoint camping. Although I don't agree with the point, at least a big dark zone would give you many checkpoints to go and fast travel to. Dark zone events, so at the moment all dark zones are really small. So if we had one big massive one, you'd be able to fit these dark zone events in, because at the moment there's just not enough room for these things. That manhunt theory that was mentioned, although an amazing theory, the dark zones again are just a little bit too small. The dedicated lobbies, people are asking for these things because the dark zones are so small. And again, the time to extract, you know, that's another point. These are all combinations of reasons why people just simply aren't enjoying the dark zone. And for me, making one big massive dark zone would solve everything discussed in this video. It'd encourage PvP because the area would be bigger, you'd be able to sneak around if you didn't want to get involved. It'd stop people jumping into different dark zones when they keep on getting killed in one of the dark zones, for instance, so it'd stop people running away and create a better PvP environment. And as I say, the concepts of the current Dark Zones are just so poor. What you could do is you could make all these Dark Zones a light zone. You could say like the agents have took them back over and made them into a light zone part of the map, or you could turn them into a stronghold area, I don't know. But for me, we should have one big massive Dark Zone north of the White House. I've looked at it on Google Maps. I'll link a video right now on screen, and that'll actually show you a concept of the area above the White House and how actually detailed it is. And like I know we want a new game, I get that, but the Dark Zone in Division 1 is just hands down so much better. And I don't think anyone I've spoke to like 3 Dark Zones. But if you like 3 Dark Zones, put it in the comments down below. Tell me why you do. I am open to discussion, so please do comment down below if you like 3 Dark Zones, but the majority of the community don't like it. And I think Massive can see that, and I think if they put their hands up and went, okay, we're going to do it, I think the game will be brilliant. At the moment, if a change like this isn't integrated, I think it's going to be like 1.3 again, where we lose a lot of the community, and we do not want that. And they expanded the map quite a lot in the Division 1, so there's no reason why they can't expand the map into one big massive Dark Zone. I just think it solves all the problems the community have discussed within this post, and I'd love to know what everyone else thinks down below. But yeah, one big massive Dark Zone would solve everything. But that's it for today, guys. If you did enjoy this style of video of getting the community involved, please do hit that like button. Anyone that was involved today, let me know down below your thoughts. And if you do want to get involved with one of these videos in the future, my social media channels are down below, so I do post all these questions there. And if you have lasted this long in the video, guys, there is obviously something you liked about it, so don't forget to hit that sub button. And until next time, Agent out.